This is a little bit of a gardening telltale. So today was the half moon, and I went to deepen my half moons in the soil. And this time I walked through in the city um, and planted some garlic. So I put my rooted garlic in the soil and planted it and deepened. Some guy offered me a tulia, which is kind of like something to work the soil, but I didn't want to piss off like my parents, so I was just like, no, thank you. And I really worked like with the tools that I had. The wonderful things that happened. So first of all, I totally created those half moons a lot more articulate within the soil, looking a lot more lush and profound. And gorgeous. And one of them, I found that I was working through a ground that seems like some construction or something like that. And as I worked deep into the soil, I found really healthy soil. And that reminded me of how these neighborhoods used to be actually very strong neighborhoods before the municipality changed and broke down the power of the neighborhoods. But I also remember that the people that lived there were from origins were still child weddings or wedding very young or arranged marriage wore a costume. So I set intention in the soil to, to change that to so that we have a better balance of yin and yang and more, standing the test of time. But it was so fascinating to discover an actually very healthy soil, which reminded me that the entire area of Negev was not a desert, okay? And it was nourishing. And this is way before Jews lived here, and even when the Palestinians lived here, there was a desert, and that is, as I said, in this area. I don't know what's happening in like Indonesia or other places. I need to learn, the soil. I need to learn the cultures. I need to understand more. I live in Negev since 2009. We are in 2024. I can't say I know everything, but I have volunteered here. I'm living here, so it's easier for me to understand the difference where things are going, and the same costumes that are, right now. I hope we understand more and more that those are not good costumes. We're basically creating famine, contributing to creation of famine, to occupation of this land, which isn't necessary. And I remembered another story where I had someone who was a colleague in raising awareness to like CPTSD, and she lived in one of the kibbutz or moshav, I don't know, a type of weird settlement in the Negev. And she said nothing grows on this soil, and they tried so hard. And then they moved up north, and then there was 7th October, which was very sad because she really moved into a lush area with fruit trees and so on, then had to move around again, and I think she still had to move around again. And I was just thinking about the half moons and how that technique forested the Sahara and basically can allow soil that was not fertile before to be fertile. But I also remembered my natal chart and how it is a part of my skill and a part of my life path to make that which was considered infertile fertile, or to rearrange the things in a way that you can see the fertility and grow life. So that was another moment, okay, to have this suddenly fresh soil, because here me digging half moons into the soil thinking, okay, I'm going to create a structure which is going to revive the soil, and then underneath there is like completely fantastic soil, okay, in one of the half moons. And then I moved to deepen another half moon, and then for the other one that I did, it was remembering that I'm already approaching the area where the sex workers work at night. So the sex worker that is here, that I gave her talisman of third lunar mention, which is the wishes, okay, wish granted. And I told her of what it is. And I began to work on that area. What I really loved is how the soil crunched up so easily. It was relatively dry soil, but it was crunching. I would just dig a little bit into the soil. I would just remove the stuff. And when I got to like where the sex workers would actually like could also work, then immediately I turned to removing for these practices of using women in that way, removing for the sexpionage, removing for the type of culture that was sexist, abusive, enslaving, and so on. And then I began to sing. And the singing was about life itself, and how in the before the winter we prepare the soil for the spring. And that was just this magical moment of working into the soil and setting the intentions before the rain comes, so that the people will be housed and so on. And within one of those half moons, with the first one, I actually found another tiny sphere and marble, okay? And immediately that reminded me of the and I knew that that was an original one. That's of the things that I manifested, because I talked in another episode about me finding somebody putting like small trenches of soil, like small trenches of like trees or so, like I don't know, dried grass, and inverted half moon with a tiny marble. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll just reinvert that. And I made it today a giant, half moon, and found the fresh soil. But the thing is that this one was actually a sphere of the ones I manifested when I was living in Gimel, which is another developing, it's not developing, but it's actually a neighborhood. And I was just trying to do the teal swan trick of imagining a marble. And that was my very first practice in trying to visualize a manifestation. It was very challenging for me. And I saw it again, this marble is still from back then. And so it was a dark blue shape, a dark blue color with soil in it. So that was very fated, that I was fated to come here and to do that, and to improve upon the creation of the half moons, where I take the place that was recently used for very bad practices regarding sexuality, the soil, fertility, for regardless of gender, right? And at that time, we're creating something that is actually holding water. And that was something that I was very meant to do, and it's very likely something that I manifested while activating this energy of manifestation years back. And then I watched a Teal Swan episode, and it talks about two things. One is how in the past we thought that slavery was okay, that people don't know how to run their lives. And that reminded me of the notions in rehabilitation when you had a mental crisis, the trying to adapt the person into society. Now we finally in Aquarius, we understand that we need to adapt society to its individuals. And immediately thinking about, my psychologist, and how he's like part of these lodges, and how that he constantly tried to direct my life, where it's like, hey, if you would just be inspired, like you have so much to give, you would just be inspiration rather than try to control for my life, for my sexual energy, for all these things, as the call taught you. But it's like, it's wrong. Then you would have the satisfaction where your work yields as a psychotherapist, and I would have actual recovery without feeling like I have to recover in spite of the therapist. So, and the other thing was about women, and how people thought that schooling would strain the nervous system of a woman and so on. which nowadays is funny. And it kind of sent me back to 2007. I was speaking with a musician. I'm not gonna like say the name right now because I've already said that name, but it's just not to pop it again. But the thing is that that person was thinking that women have less skills in mathematics and so on. Now, for me, as a person who have mistakes with the small numbers, although mathematics is expressions, that's just not numbers, but that's not what you learn for most in mathematics unless you go to actually study mathematics. So I didn't think much of it. I said, well, I do writing, I do creation, but I also do science, and I'm not that good with numbers, but I actually have not terrible mathematical thinking either. And just the way that he was ideating women, it's kind of like the woman is the goddess, no, God is a woman, but mainly ideating them as the goddess of fertility. And that kind of brought me to the rethinking about Diana, where she's like, she was the goddess of fertility, but actually she became the goddess of Artemis, the goddess of women who are child free during Hellenistic society. And that pertains to what we go through today, where it's like, well, I'm 40 years old and did not have children, where I'm actually a goddess of fertility. Okay, both in the fact that my parents were trying and trying and trying, and then I came to the world, which was considered miracle, but it's like, hey, they were testing only the woman. There was nothing wrong. The minute I understood, it was like, hey, if it's a lineage of satanic ritual abuse, there's gonna be problems with sperm count, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. We need to abolish satanic ritual abuse for this reason. Um, and so my father was not in any lodge or anything like that that I know of. So it's not like his issue. It was more, okay, perhaps lineage or DNA issue. The family was in the church, yes. And that means lodges. In Netherlands, that means lodges. And so all these things coming as I'm working through the soil and thinking about how important it is for to understand. And I was like, how come when we understood that sperm is also important to have children, women became childless and men began to, like, that is just so fucking strange. Like, wasn't that supposed to give significance to the men? It's like, hey, you're also important in the process of life creation, and that apparently did not do that effect. So it's kind of like the role of Diana as goddess of fertility adapts itself, and when the conditions are not ripe to have good relations between the man and woman, or the yin and yang, whether it's the same sex or not, because there are all kinds of arrangements into which children come from. Okay, whether it's a couple that cannot have children, so have affair with another person, and then it's kind of like non-monogamous, or people have co-parenting, or just like a lot of arrangement. If you add IVF, then, which is, I think IVF is so idealized by people, which is something that, I did not like freeze my ovaries or anything like that, both because it was not accessible for me, and just like because I still have menstruation, but at 40, but that was just like my story. And the medical field has to be compatible with fertility. So there I am watching this Teal Swan episode, and I'm like, oh my god, this is just so relevant to what I've been doing today, and how that sphere again, that marble again, showed up. With that was kind of like the only thing that I could concentrate somehow on for very limited time. It was very challenging for me to like manifest visually, but still things align up, and my manifestation power is not lost, but is actually deepened. um, and I find that to be so fascinating. Even with the Mercury retrograde, it's kind of like, hey, that talisman of the Tema Mundi was kind of like lost on. And so with the butters that I made and so on, I began to grow my focus and grow my ability to manifest in other ways. and create with the soil and do something that is independent of like a fund or anything like that, and do something that's mine. Not because I invented anything there, but it's like the project is mine, which I'm proud of, and I have like the sovereignty and the creativity, and the change that I actually want to make in the world, and take action and to manifest with action. It kind of reminded how I dream with action, and that came into being again. It was so lovely to just do something that's not constantly defending myself. I don't just do something with my life that I love and enjoy. And then I found another garlic here, which already began to have like the green parts. So I put it in some water, and I'm going to grow garlic again. Um, when I grow garlic, I grow. It's such a great thing. During 7th October War, there were like two garlic heads growing, and that kept me through the war, like to film them, to focus on their growth. That kept me through the war. um, it's funny because I ordered that talisman of the first, the tincture, and I began to think about denuclearification and A bombs and so on, all these things. And then when it was, I guess stolen or missing, I don't know, then those issues came together with what I've been through, to create a manifestation of something different. Okay, if it's like Shirley has consciousness of where I direct my energy, and have my sovereignty back in congruence with the neurosystem of the universe. And this is very Sedna, okay? Because Sedna, curating betrayal for Sedna, it's about honoring ourselves, and she's Inuit goddess, and it's just the accommodation for the Sedna stories that Palestine has been missing, and unfortunately also Israel has been missing, and the soil upon which of the 7 wells has been missing. I'm very filled with gratitude to be on this soil and doing this, and rooting in and doing this project, and incorporating, hopefully in the future, like traveling short distances and doing that on different soils and see what comes up. In Arad, there was something very terrible, like with the rocks and how they would use it to throw it on women, and like really weird things coming up. But that's rearranging that, and of course, rock structure is drier, is more stagnant, is moving mountains. Okay, I'm really looking forward to travel maybe to Mitzpe or to Dimona and try the half moons there and see what comes up. So thank you for watching. It's been very exciting for me, and I'm so excited to do something, okay? Not just like self-defense all day, but actually do something, which is really, really joyous. And yes, thank you for listening.